this video, I want to talk about fluctuating capacity and why it matters. So fluctuating capacity, the name of that gives you this sense of this visual of something moving that isn't stagnant. And that's exactly what it's referring to. It is referring to mental capacity, which I won't define here, but you can think about that like the ability to make decisions for oneself, although there are more detailed legal definitions. But this decision making, it can actually come and go. And this is where it gets really complicated. And why I want to talk about what it is and why it matters is because it can make matters very tricky for people who experience fluctuating capacity. So let me paint the picture a little bit more. Where I sometimes see fluctuating capacity is with illnesses or disabilities that can change over time. So for example, mental illness. Somebody might be on medication and they can make all of their own decisions and they're high functioning, and then they stop taking their medication and their mental health declines. And during that period of decline and mental deterioration in their mental health, their ability to make decisions, to exercise judgment, that gets worse and worse and worse, and they are no longer capable. Then they get back on their medication and things improve. So it has changed over time. This can happen with medication. It can also happen just based on someone's condition with a stroke or dementia. There might be different times of day, different lucid moments, and somebody's ability to make decisions for themselves and really understand what they're deciding and appreciate the consequences, that can come and go. And it's very, very challenging because in the law, in the way our laws, and I mean this in the broad sense, healthcare, property, all kind of decision making, the law recognizes this idea of capacity. And when somebody is capable of making their own decisions, it is their right to make those decisions or decline, refuse to make certain decisions. It's their right. When somebody lacks capacity, we have different legal mechanisms where somebody can step in and become a decision maker on behalf of another person, whether that's for healthcare or property or other decision making. Well, what do you do with fluctuating capacity? It's actually very hard. And that's why I wanted to make this video, is because there's not a complete easy answer, but at least the first step is being aware of this challenge, is that if capacity comes and goes, it can be very difficult to say in a point in time who is making the decision. It's often on the healthcare providers proposing a treatment to decide in that moment if their patient is capable. And that can be a psychiatrist, a dentist, a massage therapist, whoever the healthcare provider proposing a treatment is. It's for them to determine if they believe their patient is capable. And there is a presumption of capacity. But that healthcare provider, if they believe the patient is not capable, they can then turn to a substitute decision maker. So in some circumstances, it can be dealt with on a kind of case-by-case, moment-by-moment basis. Other things that make it much more complicated, like managing property. If capacity comes and goes, it's really difficult to say, here's your bank card. No, you don't get it anymore. Okay, now you're capable. Now you're not. It's just not at all practical. And so this is why we have some mechanisms like powers of attorney and guardianship, where there can be a little bit more structure and certainty. Powers of attorney are documents that we draft for ourselves. And in doing so, we can think about, if I were to have fluctuating capacity, what would that look like? When do I want this document to be effective? And put specifics about when people want it to be kind of activated, is the word often used. When do I want this document to be activated or used by the person I'm appointing? With respect to guardianship, it's usually a little bit more clear. Once guardianship is in place, the guardian is now making decisions. And so even if capacity does fluctuate, it tends to be less of a legal problem, less confusing, because the guardian has legal authority. So guardianship sometimes can help in these situations, but regardless, it's important to know that fluctuating capacity is certainly a concept, a difficult, confusing concept, but nonetheless, the idea of fluctuating capacity is to recognize that someone's ability to make their own decision can come and go, and where it is possible to recognize people's autonomy and allow them to make their own decisions when they're capable, that's certainly the goal, to the extent that it is possible. So it's confusing, but we kind of do the best we can with it. So that's fluctuating capacity in a nutshell. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you in the next video.